Thomas Tyner. Last night ran for 644 yards
and 10 touchdowns.
It's both Oregon State records.
Thomas Tyner.
40 times a 4.28.
Usually you just need to block for like 2 seconds and he's already in the end zone. So
every single time they kicked it to him, he took it to the house.
And you better brace yourselves because this is where we have a pretty big plot twist.
Oh man, it was a long journey to get there.
I don't think any of you are going to be ready for what I'm about to say next. Over 10 plus years ago, there was a 5-star running back who was absolutely shredding defenses left and right. And what made him so unique is he didn't just possess one trait, and here's what I'm talking about. A lot of times when you see these 4- and 5-star recruit running backs coming out of high school, they're either really fast or they're either really strong. You don't really see a good mix of those. Well, with this young man, he possessed both of those traits, and he actually stated he'd rather run over people than juke them and avoid them.
I think running over sounds more exciting. Run over the first guy than juke the next guy.
And oh yeah, my bad, I probably should have told you this as well. He had a 4.28 40-yard dash. May I remind you, we're talking about a high schooler. Not too bad at all. With this extremely rare combination of strength and speed, this helped him set a single season state record for rushing yards in one season. But more importantly, in one game against his biggest rival, he had 644 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns. In one game! That's ridiculous, but if it wasn't enough, in that same game, he also had 2 receiving touchdowns with over 100 yards through the air. And not most people, I mean every single person that knew this guy, they thought he was a for sure lock to get to the NFL. Not only was he a phenomenal talent and athlete, but he also was an extremely humble guy who had a great head on his shoulders.
he's got a great attitude. He's a very, very humble guy. Thomas is going to go big in the future.
You couldn't find a person who had something bad to say about him because he was that nice of a guy. But unfortunately for our said player here, after high school, things came crashing down, and they came crashing down relatively fast. And what had me so intrigued in the story is it pretty much got to the point where he fell off the grid. Everybody was left in the dark because he disappeared within the blink of an eye. And there's a lot of questions people have been asking about this guy even till this day. However, it all circles back to the one. And I mean the one big question we're going to try to get to the bottom of in today's video. What really happened to Thomas Tyner? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hope all of you are having a great and fantastic day. If not, hope this video can make it a little bit better. And major shout out to Anthony1995 for recommending this video. And I just wanted to drop by and say I've really been enjoying making these story videos in the off season. They're super interesting to me, and it seems like you guys have been enjoying them as well. And as long as you guys enjoy them, we'll keep making them because your boy Matt is a fan of the people, and I want to get the people what they want. And with that being said, you also know about to say if you have any recommendations for story videos, a certain player you think is worthy of a video, leave a comment down below, and we might make that video. You never know. And if you are enjoying these story videos, you like football content like this, consider subscribing to the channel because it helps us out tremendously. Can't emphasize that enough. I've jibber jabbered enough. All right, Matt, blah, blah. Shut the crap up. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Man, oh man, good old Thomas Tyner. And you already know, to get into his story, we got to throw it all the way back to where things started. Mr. Thomas Tyner grew up in Aloha, Oregon. Not Aloha, Hawaii. Aloha, Oregon. Yes, it's a city in Oregon. I get it. That may be confusing because when we hear Aloha, you immediately think of Hawaii. Anyways, though, like I was saying, grew up in Aloha, and this is where he played his high school football at. And let's just say from the jump, he was always an extremely talented player and athlete. Well, fast forward in time, though, to his 10th grade year, which is his sophomore year in high school. This is where he had 1,821 rushing yards, but here's the most impressive stat to me about all this. He averaged over 9 yards per carry. That is unreal, and on the season in total, he had 21 touchdowns. His junior year was alright, even though he was battling some minor injuries here and there, and just remember that, because we'll come back to that later in this video. Fast forward in time into his senior season, he was flat out unstoppable. And I'm going to show you some of his highlights right here. You can see it for yourself. It was pick your poison. To give you a comparison here, it was the equivalent to when you're playing your younger brother in basketball in the backyard. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. How do you want it? How do you want to get lit up by Thomas Tyner? If you want to attack him head on, good luck. He'll run you over. He didn't mind doing that whatsoever. You wanted to come at an angle? That's fine. He'll outrun you. You want to go low? He'll juke you. It didn't matter. All in all, for his senior season, I could sit up here and rant and rave about him for the next 10 minutes. All you need to know is it was utterly ridiculous at how good he was. Set the single season state record with 3,415 rushing yards, and in that one game, remember, he had 643 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns. And that was just on the ground. In the same game, like I told you guys in the intro, he had 106 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns as a wide receiver, 12 in total. He was a monster. But with all that being said, and as great as it is, what stood out a lot to me when I was doing my research for this video and gathering information is how highly his teammates spoke of him. Almost every single teammate said the same thing. He's a humble and great teammate.
Thomas is just a great man and very loyal, to his team, and he's just a great guy in general.
And to go on top of that, anytime you try to get Thomas Tyner to talk highly about himself, he refused to do it. He's one of the humblest people I've ever seen do interviews.
643 yards and 10 touchdowns. I mean, I wouldn't have got that without the line and the blocking outside. But overall, it was just a fun game, man. A long game, but it was awesome. I mean, right after the game, I was just like, I didn't even know I rushed for 600 yards, but once I got home, I saw it on ESPN, and it was just enjoyable for me and the whole community. So, oh man, it was a long journey to get there. I think it was 3,400 yards, and again, like I said, this all goes to the line and the people outside, wide receivers blocking outside, and it was a whole team effort. And, I mean, I wouldn't have got there without him. But
And although I don't know him personally, just going off of what I've seen, he seems like a great overall dude just to hang around with. And the reason I bring that up is that's another main reason people thought he was going to go really far in his football career. Because a lot of times in these story videos for these 4- and 5-star recruits that go to college, what is their biggest, I guess you'd say, detriment to themselves? And what's the main reason they fall off? Because they can't get out of their own way. For Tyner, though, that wasn't going to be the case. Nobody thought that would happen. When it was all said and done for his high school career, he finished as a 5-star recruit. Duh, that's the obvious. Had a scout grade on a scale of 1 to 100 of 98 and was ranked 22nd nationally in the country. He had every college in the country drilling over him, but his recruiting process was relatively simple. He decided to stay home and commit and sign with Oregon. At the time, too, with this dating all the way back into 2012, 2013, this was a no-brainer. Tyner is this fast and elusive running back, and Oregon, this was around the time when they was doing all that no-huddle stuff with Chip Kelly. I rarely say this when recruits commit and sign with a college, but this was as close to a match made in heaven you're ever going to see. It was a perfect, and I mean a perfect fit. And in his first year there as a true freshman in 2013, he was great. He saw the field a lot. He got 115 carries for 711 yards, averaging 6.2 yards per carry with 9 touchdowns. As a true freshman playing for a really good team in Oregon, it doesn't get too much better than that, at least in my humble opinion. At this point in time in our story, you got to think about everything that has transpired up until this point. Tyner dominated high school football. He goes out there and balls out as a true freshman. Everybody's expecting him to be the next big thing. If he had 700 rushing yards, averaging over 6 yards per carry as a true freshman, the sky was the limit for this guy as a sophomore and junior. For most of your athletes, people label the junior year as a breakout season. But for Thomas Tyner, it appeared to seem that was going to be his sophomore year. He had a ton of expectations. And I don't want to sit up here and say his sophomore season was bad, because it wasn't by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we can all agree on this. He failed to live up to the hype and expectations. Every single one of his numbers in that 2014 season, they decreased. Before I show you the numbers, I do got to throw in there, a main reason for that is because he was sharing the backfield. It wasn't just him back there. And you also got to understand that 2014 Oregon team is the same team that made it to a national championship game, so they had a ton of talent. His carries dropped from 115 to 113, yards dropped from over 700 to under 600, and his yards per carry dropped from 6.2 to 5.1, and only had 5 touchdowns. And like I said, I really don't want these numbers to deceive you too much, because in the playoff game against Florida State, he was a leading rusher. He had over 100 rushing yards. And in the championship game against Ohio State, yes, they lost, but he was a leader rusher in that game as well. So yes, his numbers did take a hit, but he was still a main contributing factor on one of the best teams in the nation. And another thing that somewhat flew under the radar is in that 2014 season, although he played in 11 games, he was nipped up here and there and banged up by some minor injuries that bothered him and affected him. But even with the, we'll just say, not so great season as a sophomore, people still was really high on this guy, wasn't concerned about him whatsoever. He was just a sophomore. At bare minimum, he was going to have another year left of college football. His junior year, the expectations were the same. He was expected to have another great season, go off, and potentially head to the NFL draft. Well, I don't know how to ease into this, so I'm just going to come out and say it. That didn't happen due to a very weird situation. Let me give you some context so you're not lost here. At this point in time in our story, it is after his sophomore season of 2014, heading into his junior season of 2015. And all throughout that offseason, not a single word comes out about Thomas Tyner. But right before the season, on August 9th in 2015, these news outlets start coming out and saying, oh, well, Thomas Tyner, he's going to have surgery. And come to find out, it was true. He was going to have shoulder surgery. But here's the one big question everybody had. If he didn't hurt his shoulder in a practice leading up to that, which he didn't, why is he waiting to have this surgery right before the season? Why didn't he do the surgery in May or even before then in March? You see what I'm saying? The only answer we have is that it was stated he tried to fight through the pain, couldn't deal with it anymore, and he decided, you know what, I gotta do it, I gotta have surgery. And his dad came out and stated in an article it was due to quote unquote lingering pain and discomfort. But here's where things get even more fascinating. There was some speculation and rumors going around that he might potentially leave Oregon, and his dad stated quote unquote he's going to be a Duck. There's no story. Yeah, just remember this for, well, we're about to get into it. You'll see. Since he had that surgery right before the season, he missed the entire year, so there's nothing to be said there. But right when the season ended in February of 2016, this former 5-star recruit, former #1 running back in the nation, released some big-time groundbreaking news. Thomas Tyner announced, and you guys aren't ready for this, that he is going to be medically retiring from football. Yes, that's right. You heard me correctly. He retired from the sport of college football. And everybody was confused by it because they was like, well, wait a minute. You rehabbed the shoulder. I thought you were good to go. But apparently, and this is also according to his father, although his one shoulder, it healed, the other one, it was still bothering him. And this goes back to something I told you in his high school days. Remember his junior year of high school? I told you he was battling injuries. That's where it comes into place. Thomas Tyner just got sick and tired of doing all the rehab and all the mental and physical stress that comes with it. So yeah, there's not too much more to be said. He shocked the entire college football world and announced his retirement. End of story. At least, that's what we thought. Over a year later, in May of 2017, Thomas Tyner comes out of nowhere and announces he's returning to the sport of college football. But here's the kicker with that. You're probably thinking, hey, that's great, it's coming back to Oregon. My Lee Corsa says, not so fast, my friend. He decided to go to Oregon's biggest rival, Oregon State. At least that is from my knowledge. I do apologize if that's not Oregon's biggest rival, but I'm pretty sure it is. I know recently Oregon and Washington, that's a pretty big rival, but I would definitely say Oregon State's their main rival. And this is a huge turn of events because Thomas Tyner hasn't played college football, competitive sports, in over 2 years, and now he's coming back to play for a Power 5 college football team. And there's a lot of people being optimistic about it, but it didn't turn out so well. And I looked at multiple different articles, seeing what Thomas Tyner had to say with his time at Oregon State, and to sum it up, he said, number one, he wasn't in that great of a shape, and number two, they didn't utilize him in the way he wanted to be utilized, but he did admit in college football that does happen sometimes. And I'm chalking it up to it was a combination of both things. Number one, Tyner hasn't played competitive sports in over 2 years, and number two, yeah, they probably didn't use him the right way. They probably could have used him a little bit more. I don't think it was one way or another, and in reality, it didn't matter. Oregon State sucked that year in 2017. They went 1-11. And in that season, he had 64 carries for 297 yards, so he did average, decent little average there, had over 4.5 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns. I wouldn't label it as a bad season. It was more so of it was a lack of opportunity, but remember, to get that opportunity to have over 100, 200 carries, you have to earn it in practice, so maybe he didn't earn it. Who knows? The only thing we know that is a cold hard fact is it didn't go so well. And although it wasn't a great season for Oregon State, things didn't go the way he wanted them to, he could have petitioned the NCAA for another season of eligibility. But sadly, he didn't even want to, and here's what he stated, quote unquote, "My heart's not in football anymore. If I'm not 100% committed, it's time for me to move on." I think this was a combination of multiple different things. Number one, it seemed like the injury bug, it caught up to him, and I understand and I can relate to that 100%. He was battling injuries in high school, battled them at Oregon, and he got sick and tired of it. If you've dealt with multiple different injuries yourself, you know exactly what Thomas Tyner was going through. Then to go on top of that, when he was healthy, he wasn't getting the best opportunity he probably felt like he deserved. And as an athlete, nobody likes sitting on the bench. We all want, if we're running back, to have 20 carries a game. And when you put all this work in the offseason and you're not playing, whether it be in baseball, basketball, football, etc., yeah, it's discouraging. I think that weighed in heavily on his decision to leave football, and last but not least, I think he slowly but surely started to fall out of love with the game. And you could say the last reason is due to the first two reasons, injuries and not playing a lot. With all that being said though, there was a question lingering. All right, you're not playing football, that's all fine and dandy, but what are you going to do next? Because for all these college athletes, they have dedicated their entire life to that said sport. That's all they know. And you better brace yourselves because this is where we have a pretty big plot twist. Nothing bad, but it's just a plot twist. I don't think any of you are going to be ready for what I'm about to say next. Thomas Tyner found a new hobby, and it's something he really enjoyed. You know what that was? Hunting. But not only hunting, going outside and enjoying the mountains, enjoying the landscape. Here's what he had to say himself about going hiking and, I guess you'd say, exploring the outdoors. Quote unquote, I was just blown away coming out of the tree line in the woods and the mountain just smacks you in the face. It's gorgeous. I kept hiking down the trail and I come to this one spot that's so amazing, and you know me, I can't stop taking pictures and hanging out. I never wanted to leave. Continuing along here, you got to bust you know what and get up the hill and be ready to shoot because they take off so fast and shoot straight down the hill, referring to birds. That's kind of when I fell in love. I always loved the outdoors, but this is when I found a passion. It was so challenging, and just being out there where it was quiet, you didn't have to deal with the politics, especially at this point in my life where I had ups and downs in my football career. It had been a pretty big part of my whole life. It was just nice to get out there and not have to deal with all the voices and really invest in how much I love being in the outdoors. Man, oh man, I can't tell you enough how much I love that for Thomas Tyner, and it probably was a huge stress relief as well, and it was relaxing. All throughout his entire career, dating back to high school, there was so much pressure on him, and I don't want to make that sound like a bad thing because I personally believe pressure, it's a privilege. You want people to count on you in this life and hold you to a high standard. But for him, it just seemed like it got to be too much, and he wanted to do some other things, and I respect that, and I admire that he came out and said all this. And here's the last thing he had to say about this new hobby and how his life's been after football. I'm excited more than anything. It's a new life for me. I get to be me. People want to see and know the football side of me, but now that I'm not playing football, I'm going to enjoy myself a lot more and do what I love. Hold on. I gotta clap it up. Like I said, I love that. I love to hear it. But that was around 2020 when he said all that, and now it's 2024, so 4 years have passed by. What has he been up to ever since then, you may ask? Well, from everything I've seen, pretty much the same stuff. He's still hunting and going outdoors, and I think that's what he really likes to do in this life. He's pretty good at laying low key, and I think that's how he likes it because he doesn't have a Twitter. He does have an Instagram, however, it is private though. In his Instagram, he does have a picture of him and his dog. Looks like they're hunting. That's great, and I like his bio. It says, I ain't rich, but Lord, I'm free. What a story though, man. What a story. It sucks it didn't work out football-wise, but I don't think this story overall, it came to a terrible ending because he found something else he enjoys doing. To Thomas, man, I hope you continue to enjoy hunting and overall just continue to enjoy life because that's what it's about. I always love when these stories end in a positive note because it's hard for these athletes to go from the top dog, the hometown hero that got everybody looked up to for 15 plus years to just a regular person, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think what helped Tyner throughout this entire process and the downfall, if you want to call it, of his college football career is his humbleness and humility when he was at the top. Cocky and brash athletes, they're entertaining, and I'm not going to lie, I enjoy watching them because you never know what they're going to do next. And like I said, it's just entertainment. But at the end of the day, I will always much rather watch a humble athlete than a cocky one. I think humility is extremely important in this life because you're not always going to be at the top and vice versa. You're not always going to be at the bottom. Law of average. I could sit up here for the next 5 to 10 minutes and tell you how much I respect Thomas Tyner. Wind it off here. Let me know your thoughts down below. But